Watchers, a 7-year excursion that takes you on a special kind of adventure. It's about the supernatural, and people flock to it to gain awareness on forbidden subjects like UFOs. The Shroud of Turin, the Torah Codes, alien implants, the Nephilim giants, and even life after death. All these and more were why people always clamored for the next Watchers. Now, you'll get to see what many think were the best moments in the series. Excerpts of some of the greatest and most powerful true stories. We'll start with one of the strangest experiences, the documenting of an alien implant, the man who lived with it, and its removal. It was Dr. Roger Lear's last time on camera, and his last alien implant removal surgery. What happened defied logic and the laws of physics as we know them.
A man contacted Watchers with the belief that he has an implant. LA is bringing him to Dr. Roger Lear's offices for x-rays and tests.
So we'll get your pictures today, and I'll take the old one that I got, and I'll take that to a radiologist. So that's the next step. And then have him, take a look and confirm that what we're seeing is there. And then he'll give me some estimate as to where it is, how close it is to the bone, approximate size. But we'll eventually wind up doing a CAT scan.
We take one anterior posterior, one of a medial oblique, like this, and then one lateral. We'll actually have you come across so that it's closest to the film. All right, I'm gonna center that up. Get your leg as close to that as possible. So it's right in here. Okay, so all I want you to do is just stand still. All right, 3, 2, 1. Good.
You have an object in your leg, at least it appears so far that there's something in your leg. Tell us the backstory here. Where does this thing come from? Where do you remember seeing it, or feeling it, I should say?
Well, nobody really knows where it came from. I was having severe knee problems one time, and I had it x-rayed. And the doctors
How far back is that?
That's about 2005.
Okay.
And out of the blue, my legs started really hurting bad. Felt like a railroad spike being driven through my knee and my leg.
That would be painful.
It was put you on the floor pain.
Wow.
And the doctors took the x-rays, and they said there was nothing wrong with my knees, but they wanted to know what was with this object in my leg, and I had no idea where it came from. So we're here today x-raying it, and maybe we can get down to where this metal object came from.
Do you have any recollection in your childhood? Do you have anything what we would call missing time? In other words, did you ever see like a UFO, a ball of light? Were you knocked unconscious? Anything like that in your childhood?
Shorter type alien with the oval head and the big eyes, and that's all I remember, 3 of them. And I saw them in my bedroom, and of course you're frightened, you can't move. And actually I got up, and I was going to do a football tackle. And once I started to hit them, they disappeared. And that was my contact with, I believe, Greys or some kind of aliens. But living in Nevada for a number of years, I started getting involved with the UFOs and the test center and things things seemed like there might be something out there for sure.
Was it the second time you went with the football tackle and they vanished?
I believe that the football tackle was originally
That's
first contact, and then after that I felt like I was being raised straight up in the atmosphere, you want to call it, to a speed where I can felt nightgown being pulled.
And you were totally helpless at this point?
That's the only thing I remember being.
Total blackout.
Yeah, I just remember that sensation going, man, I'm really going up fast. I felt my clothes.
What about when you awakened?
I just came back, woke up that morning, And then that's all I remember.
And did you ever tell anybody about this?
Well, you just don't think of UFO stuff as a child. As an adult, you start putting the pieces together and you go, oh my God, this is very suspicious. What was happening?
All right, let's see what we got. What did you see in this one?
Right there. Now this
Oh, yeah.
so this is the lateral, and this is closest.
I see it.
This would be closest to
Okay.
the X-ray.
Where are we looking? What are we looking at? So we're talking this circular object right in the middle?
Yep, right here.
So when we look at it and we peel that up, this one's really hard to see,
Yeah.
but I'll point it out to you. Give me just a second. Right there.
Huh.
This is it here.
Right there.
And this is pretty close to what we had before.
In the original X-ray?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, Hans, if we could rotate this once more and get it a little farther over that way.
I don't know how far or close to the bone it is to be able to do that. I can give it a try.
Want to do it? Okay.
Give it a shot.
Is he up to being irradiated again?
Sure, I don't need a flashlight at night now.
You'll be the glowing person of the,
One of those things.
right.
All right, so same deal. Just hold still. Just like that. So let's see how that works. It's pretty close to this thing. Wow. But it's still rotated. But it's a little clearer now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like right up. Clear
Yeah.
space.
Okay. Yeah, there's even a clip on there, I think.
So we're about to look at the results of the CAT scan then.
That's correct. CAT scan is essentially slices through a part. It's like taking a bologna and putting it in the meat slicer and just making slices. And so you're looking at each slice as you go farther down the line.
Wow.
This is the big bone in the leg, which is the tibia. This is the small bone in the leg, which is the fibula. And again, you can see that because of the size, this has been tremendously miniaturized. But by miniaturizing them, they can get, a lot of pictures on one sheet.
So the bottom line for us is we know that there's a metallic object in our patient,
Right.
for lack of a better words, knee.
And that we can tell from this that, again, the object is superficial, meaning close to the skin, and yet near a bone, which has the qualities of the other objects that we removed. This has nothing. I scratched it when I tried to mark it.
All right.
This is the object here, here, and
On top.
here.
Amazing.
This is a famous instrument called a stud finder.
Is that just picking up the density of the bone?
No, see?
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Right.
To the same
That'd
spot.
be the same spot, yeah.
Well, it takes off.
Same as the overlay. Now it's picking up in here. That's where the
Yeah. What does that say?
It's like 6.
6 3/4, closer to 7.
7 right there. See, if you just tip it, it goes down.
If you move it away from that spot, does it change?
Yeah, it's going
Yeah.
down.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
It's, yeah, right here. That's That's about 9 milligauss, 10 milligauss, 10 milligauss right there. That's it, that's peaked at 10 milligauss. Well, here's a tiny object which is 6 millimeters in length, about the thickness of a pencil head, and it's putting out 7 milligauss. And here's a whole electronic camera that's putting out an
With a
excess
battery
of
that's
10.
fully charged.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting.
Crazy.
So now we just put the antenna close to the area of the object.
So this object is giving
strictly
off that
a
frequency.
radio wave in the FM band. Let's hold it right about there. That's an average number. It's reading 333.38604 gigahertz. Well, I did one episode with X-Files where I was a consultant behind the scenes, and it had to do with an abductee, and someone was taken and implanted, and I gave them, the correct information which they used. In this episode of X-Files, it was pretty much the real thing.
I try to relieve, and we call it the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, symptoms, which everyone will experience after a traumatic event. I also work with people who've had terrible accidents, car accidents and so forth, or someone who's been raped, or someone who's been sexually abused. They all suffer from these PTSD symptoms. Well, alien abduction is no different.
You don't remember anything, any event specifically that created that? Hitting something with a sledgehammer or anything like that?
No. You have no scar.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it yourself?
No. In the sub-Q fat anterior medial aspect of the upper shin, about 8.5 centimeters inferior to the tibial plateau.
8.5 centimeters.
0.2 centimeters anterior to the tibial cortex. 1.5 centimeters deep to the skin.
Well, let's see if I can find
About it.
it. I don't know. We might find it. Let's take a look here. What I'm going to do is kill the one light, yeah, so we can see it better. A little, this is just a little lubricant, won't hurt you.
It does show up with the stud finder. It points right to
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be valuable. Yeah, that shows up nice. It's funny, things that are right next to the skin are hard to find than if they're deep sometimes because the skin moves and you're going, make sure you're saying, maybe that's it there.
I thought we were able to feel it.
That might be it. Yeah.
Right there.
Right.
Right there.
Yeah.
That does look like it,
Yeah.
actually. That helps. Yeah.
What's the black area underneath it? What is that?
That's the shadow effect.
Interesting.
Right there. See. Yeah.
This
I bet
is sound waves, and
I
sound
bet
waves
that's
hits
it.
it and has a shadow effect afterwards.
Yeah, that's
That's
cool.
definitely a discrete entity that's in that area. So we can find it with this, so we don't need to
Yeah.
have X-ray.
Remember the one that we did where the guy had, was I think in the arm, and he had pain in the shoulder. And after you removed it, the pain in the shoulder went bye-bye.
I mean, there are a lot of things. I don't know about the nerve things around it unless it hits a nerve. I mean, maybe there is some growth, but I didn't know that. He knows more about that than I do. He's looking at these things afterwards with a microscope. I'm just taking them out.
With the pre-op tests over and the implant found, 2 weeks went by as preparations commenced for the actual surgery. Both doctors were there again, and Dr. Lear brought his special test equipment. Guests came to view this important procedure in a private room with an HD TV. Everyone thought the surgery would be uneventful. The implant was only a little ways under the skin, and there was exhaustive documentation on its location. Even though that was true, Steve Colburn decided to start by doing another ultraviolet light test to look for any unusual marks on the skin in the area of the proposed incision.
Which leg has the implant?
This one.
That one?
Is it near here by the chance?
Right in here, right?
Yeah, in his upper shin.
Just because you find fluorescence doesn't mean that it's that unusual.
On the last patient, Ron Noel, we found a large alien symbol on his upper arm. And
Shivered.
yeah, that was very spectacular. He couldn't even scrub it off after repeated attempts in the shower.
Then a strange thing happened. None of the external test devices worked properly, or at least like they did before in Dr. Lear's offices. The stud finder went off constantly anywhere it was placed on Bill's leg.
You gotta get it just at the right angle.
Is the button pushed?
Yeah, I'm pushing it.
The Gauss meter, which last time read 7 milligauss, this time read 0 no matter where it was placed.
And that's when it reads the radio waves? Magnetism.
Magnetism. We were able to see it with the ultrasound last time.
Yeah.
It wasn't hard.
It looks like it's going vertical when you see it on
So
the ultrasound.
this is the ultrasound goo, so I'm going to go straight up and down on this.
Now, you're not going to see anything, a bright spot like you do in the X-ray. You'll see actually a dark place because it's a reversed image. Here.
Even the ultrasound machine no longer could find the object, though Dr. Matriciano found it in a minute or less on the same machine during the pre-op test.
Right leg, right there. That's higher. I wasn't feeling it before.
What if you go just directly up the anterior surface of the tibia?
About an hour had passed in the operating theater, and Dr. Matriciana had gone over this little 3 by 8 inch strip of flesh on Bill's leg to no avail. Couldn't find anything. And Stephen Colburn then suggests, well, maybe they took it.
It's moved, they took it out, or it's just not
No, we've had, it'll be there. We just
We've seen this appear off X-ray before, so ultrasound
Yeah.
The
possibility.
same ultrasound machine that we're using, the same procedure, same frequency, and we can't find the object.
So it ran it.
No, we don't. No, that's way too premature. I have no idea, but he can't go in and operate unless he knows where it is. This might sound a little weird, but I'm going to pray, and I'm going to do it now, which went something like this. Father, if there are forces which are cloaking this object, I pray that you would break that and do it soon. About 2 minutes go by, and all of a sudden, there's the object showing up on the ultrasound.
Oh, there's a big shadow from something. The heck is that?
You know, where did the thing come from?
Yeah, that's a good sized shadow.
The moment wasn't lost on anyone in the room. It's kind of in the area, too.
I'll make sure I can get it every time.
Yeah, there it is.
Warning, the following scenes show an actual surgical procedure. Viewer discretion is advised.
There you go.
Okay, we're just about right. We'll find it again now. God, why did it take so long? No, we're not. We're doing things right here. Hang on a little bit of an ouch, okay?
We're going to draw the patient's blood, and then we put it in a centrifuge and spin it down and separate the cellular portion of the blood from the liquid. And then that cellular portion is then mixed with anticoagulant preservative, and that's what we actually use to put the object in. Rick, can you grab my glasses?
You want them off?
Yeah. I hate to
He doesn't want to see anything.
I can't stand the sight of blood.
He's moving a little bit. It does hurt. Sorry. I'll give it pretty slow. One of the problems of giving local anesthesia is that it obliterates the ultrasound findings. So we get them here.
And the shot hurts quite a bit. The choice we have. Especially the choice we have.
Wake you up.
Yeah. So much for that.
That was an ouch, wasn't it? Yeah, I don't think we'll have any more ouch. I think that's it. Is there enough light for you guys? I can see fine. Does that hurt?
No, I don't feel a thing.
So it's my little incision. We spread it a little bit. The question is it next to the skin or is it next to the fascia? I think it's close to both.
Probably. Well, I think it said it was subcutaneous, so probably between the skin and the fascia.
I'm going to use a little metal thing. See if I can feel it click. No. Sometimes you can find it just by a little click. Barry, you wouldn't mind holding this one up. We'll look up top first. Got a little bit of connective tissue on this side and this side. It's not increasing the size of the incision, it just makes us use what we have. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that it?
It could be.
This looks like
Here it is.
Yeah, it may
Here it
be.
comes.
Could be.
It may be.
Wow.
It's a
Yeah.
kernel.
Ah, here we go. Yeah. It ain't very big.
Just didn't jump out at him.
Here it comes. Here we got it. Can you see it? Right there, a little black spot?
Yeah, let me get real close.
In position, what we call in situ.
Yeah, see if you can
Oh,
get
that's it.
some of
Wow.
the tissue around it.
Yeah, we'll do that. So,
You got it, Rick?
yeah, can you see it? Little spot there?
Oh, yeah, there it
Little
is.
black spot?
Yeah,
Yep.
right
Yeah.
there.
That is it. Now it's a little bigger than that, see? So we'll get some of the surrounding tissue around it.
No wonder it was so invisible on ultrasound.
It wasn't very big.
Wow.
So that is the entire thing right there. I'll
Where are you gonna
right
put
here.
it?
Right there, we'll shine light around a little better. You can see it.
Yeah,
There it
that's
is.
the shape.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's
Wow.
That's pretty typical. That's
That's
similar to
You
the.
can feel it. It feels like
eight. Yeah.
it's pretty. It's softer than I thought it
The
would
gray
be.
membrane.
Yeah, see, softer than I thought it would be.
See, all right?
Here, we'll show it to you.
The implant was finally out. It was Dr. Lear's 17th implant removal surgery. As Dr. Matriciano closed the wound, Steve Colburn commented,
Yeah, we've seen this type several times before. Roger's removed probably 7 of these from patients. Maybe 40–50% are of this general cylindrical type with the gray membrane surrounding them.
it's back to CO Labs in Los Angeles, this time with a new piece of possible alien evidence. What was this thing that was removed from Bill's leg? What was it made of? Steve's first job is to remove the typical coating from around the implant that has been documented on all the other cases. The object is pulled out and will be placed inside the electron microscope. The surrounding tissue will be sent to another lab for testing.
Oh, there we go. Look at those. Those might be some bundles right there, some more very large bundles. That's an awesome shot right there.
When we see a large amount of iron in the object, and we know enough now to look at comparing the iron to what we find before, we have to do other testing to find out whether that's iron, maybe meteoric iron.
I see. And in the other samples, it was meteoric iron.
Yeah.
Roger, how does this compare so far with the other ones that you've taken out? This is number 17, so you've got quite a collection, 16, and you're really the only person on the planet that has done this research and actually spent your own time, your money, your expertise, and you know, here you are, number 17. So how do you compare this number 17 to, let's say, some of the earlier ones?
It's a never-ending education process because whenever you think you may have an answer, you really wind up with more questions. But comparatively speaking, when you find things from different individuals that you surgically remove that fill a certain criteria, and that criteria is met over and over and over and over again, then you got to believe at least that there's some similarity in the objects.
There is a piece of cloth about 14 feet long and over 3.5 feet wide that has been stored in Turin, Italy for hundreds of years. That cloth, which has survived at least one major fire, is known as the Shroud of Turin and is said to be the imprint of a crucified man, the resurrected Jesus of Nazareth, as taken from the garden tomb after the body was found missing. Is this cloth a hoax? And was the carbon-14 dating done to it intentionally falsified for profit? Was the shroud actual physical evidence of an event horizon, the imprinted evidence of a kind of energy never before seen on this earth? We'll ask the Right Honorable Barry Schwartz and Dame Isabel Pixek on their expertise and tests on the enigmatic Shroud of Turin. We're about 9,000 feet above sea level, and both Richard and I are definitely feeling the altitude, so much so that when we stopped to get a little quick bite to eat, we got out of the car and we stood up and felt woozy. We're pumping water at this altitude, lots of it, to try to avoid altitude sickness. We're on our way to see Barry Schwartz, who's the STURP photographer. The STURP team is the team that went over to Turin, Italy in 1978 and examined the enigmatic artifact known as the Shroud of Turin for about 5 to 7 days, 24/7. Very interesting to talk to Barry. Meanwhile, we are in, when John Denver writes the song Rocky Mountain High, it's amazing. The countryside is just breathtaking. Wow. Unbelievable. There he is.
Some people.
What does the Shroud of Turin, what does the cloth look like up close?
You know, one of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, what does it look like when you're up there and close to it? And I'll tell you something. You know, my first impressions was, this is in way too good a condition to be this old. That was my first impression. And people, skeptics particularly, have said, well, there you go. There's proof that it's not that old. And then I thought about it and I realized, why don't we have this mentioned in the Gospels, except maybe in 1 or 2 places, but not with an image on it or anything else? Well, you've got to remember, first of all, this had blood on it. Jewish law forbids that, leaving the grave or even touching it, okay? Now, imagine now if it's not only got blood, but an image as well. You couldn't say that. You couldn't step out and say, look, because there were iconoclasts that would want to destroy it. Not only that, you'd be punished for taking this cloth that's supposed to be in a grave and handling it and taking it out of the tomb and with an image on it. So they had to keep it a secret. I mean, they might have been the next one on the cross if they came running out of the tomb going, look what we found. I don't think that was going to happen. And one man said to me, Mr. Schwartz, does this image violate the second commandment? So now I'm standing there, and I went, second commandment. So I thought about it for a moment, and I said, well, sir, I said, our team did the most in-depth scientific study, and we were able to determine that it's neither a painting, nor a photograph, nor applied by the hand of a man. So, to answer your question, if it's none of those things, okay, and it wasn't applied by the hand of a man, then it was a naturally occurring or supernaturally occurring image. Perhaps God did it. I said, so in that case, since it wasn't done by the hand of a man, then God did the image, and it consequently could not violate any of his commandments. And he looked at me and he said, oh, well, that's a brilliant answer. And then his friend speaks up and says, do you know who this man is? And I said, have no idea. This is the Anglican Archbishop of Wellington, New Zealand. So now I'm embarrassed. Here I am, a Jew, lecturing an archbishop on theology, and I start to apologize. He goes, no, I'm writing it down. He says, that's a brilliant answer. We'd been talking about where the wound in the hands is, and unlike all the art that has been done, you can see here that the exit wound is actually here at the back of the wrist. The Romans would start by driving the nail here in the thinner furrow between these two kind of fleshy parts of your palm. So it's still in the palm, but it's further up in the palm, and they usually came in at an angle, making it harder to tear it out. And the exit wound would be about right here, and if you look right here, that's where we have the exit wound on the shroud. So And of course you can see these are the original patches, very distinctly noticeable as patches and not as, sewn in to be invisible, but to be very visible.
And where are the L-shaped?
The L-shaped burn holes, let's see if we can find, on this half of the shroud are the smaller ones, and there's one, and there's the other. This is the 4th level, and this is the 3rd level. If you were to look at the dorsal view, you would see them more distinctly, and I can show that to you on that replica over there, and you can see.
Scourging marks are just...
And you'll notice scourge marks on his chest, on his arms, on his legs, not just the back, but if you're whipping somebody and they come around, they come around and hit you in the front too. So you have all these things that, there's no way some medieval artist could have even thought of these things, let alone create an image without paint or photographic emulsion.
We're here with Dame Isabel Pixak in her amazing studio, which is, it has a sense of reverence to it that is overwhelming when both Richard and I walked in. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here. Why do you think the Shroud of Turin is not a painting?
It cannot even be denied. The shroud cannot be a painting because it breaks almost every rule of nature. And when natural law is broken, that's it. And let me tell you why. Everybody, every layman thinks that a painting is paint particles on some surface. No. It is paint particles tied together by some kind of liquid, and that goes on the surface, and as long as that liquid is completely continuous, you see a continuous image, and that is a painting.
I mean, I'm looking around the studio, and I would call this sacred art, for lack of a better.
It's sacred art.
It's sacred art. And it's, like I said earlier, when you walk in the door, you just feel I don't know where they use the word supernatural peace, but you feel a supernatural peace when you walk into what I would call a modern day sanctuary.
I really felt that this is extremely important, not only from the religious point of view, but from the scientific point of view, because some new kind of science opens through this shroud.
One of the most noted skeptics, I won't mention his name, but people will know who I'm talking about, once told me that, all that work of the stirrup team is the rantings of believers. It's very simple if you don't understand the science, that past a certain point, somebody throwing the science at you, you stop and you're not qualified to challenge the science, so you attack the scientist. And that's this particular skeptic's normal technique. And he always then throws the religious card out. But he can't do that with me because I'm Jewish. Okay, if I have an instrument, say a spectrophotometer, I'm taking a reading off of a piece of cloth. When I push the button to take that reading on the instrument, do you think that instrument cares whether I'm a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim? Or a heathen? It doesn't care. The data is the data. So if you don't like what Stirp's conclusions were, go to the peer-reviewed science, study the data, come up with your own conclusions, but it's there. And nobody else has done that but us.
You mentioned on my radio show that a £1 million donation was given. Tell us about that.
I guess the real irony of the whole carbon dating business, since we're talking about it, is the fact that after the 3 laboratories ultimately did their testing, published their results in Nature, a radiocarbon article, Oxford Laboratory received a £1 million, British pound sterling, anonymous contribution for debunking the shroud. Interestingly enough, Dr. Tite, who was from the British Museum, left the British Museum, came to Oxford, and some of that money built him a nice lab at Oxford. And look, if the order of events is as I've stated them, and that happened after the fact, then okay, well, so be it. But when did these 3 labs find out that this contribution was coming? Did they have any foreknowledge or forewarning that this was the case, or was it a big surprise to them that came 2 months after the dating was released? Now, of course, if they didn't know about it, no harm, no foul. But if they knew about it, if they knew this contribution was going to come, depending on what they found about the shroud, had to be for debunking the shroud, then I question the entire process.
Everybody looks at the two images like this, for instance. Two separate images which have nothing to do with each other, it seems like. And nobody thinks of it that they were on both sides of the shroud and they were wrapped around a figure. So they were not flat, they were wrapped around. So what does that mean? You look at it, why is it so separate? Why one would not influence the other?
The other, right.
And then you realize suddenly, heaven's sakes, we never noticed it, that there is a horizontal object which we never noticed before, going through, which slices the shroud body into two halves. One has nothing to do with the other. What is the single phenomenon which can cause that? We are dealing with two event horizons. And we are already a little bit familiar with event horizons, only they are a little bit different than the shroud's event horizon. The event horizon is an object which, when you approach, it cuts space-time into two halves. One you can know up to a point which you are approaching from your side. But there will be a point when you cannot know anything anymore what is behind it. The last photon would hit it, the last time quanta will hit it. And after that, nothing.
For all practical purposes, time and space have stopped. Is that correct?
We are very close to it, and I will explain that.
Okay.
This too is.
So the body laid like this in the tomb.
Yes.
Just like we see it on the shroud.
Yes, yes.
But suddenly at the event, it began to levitate.
Yes, the gravity was defeated, the second law. Then time and space stops. And there is a total, for the first time in the history of the universe, there is a total time collapse. And even nature, the scriptures kind of hint at it, that strange things were happening. That was the moment when time stopped. The universe would have stopped existing if somehow it would not have been cut to a very, very minimum of time. And that's why we see on the shroud an unknown thing which looks like burn, but it's not.
In 2002, a clandestine, is the only word I can use, restoration was done without consulting any scientists. Just a small group in Turin took it upon themselves, although I must admit they got Pope John Paul II's permission. But I'm not too sure that by then John Paul knew what he was signing, or even if he signed it, or perhaps the Secretary of State might have signed it. So it was done ostensibly with his permission. And they removed all the patches, and they removed the backing cloth, and they scraped all the burned stuff away, and they vacuumed it, and they used steam in areas to get some of the creases out. And it's now 7 centimeters longer. And they virtually eliminated the possibility for a lot of science.
In 1976, Professor Eliyahu Rips in Israel was shown a book by Rabbi Michael Dov Weissmandel. This book showed numerous examples of a code evident in the book of Genesis and continuing through the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. Names and events were mathematically encoded using a skip code called equidistant letter sequencing.
The fact that it's been concealed until this moment in history is indisputable because up until the advent of the computer, the most you could do would be to count letters and with your finger in your hand and, you know, wet your finger and turn the page. With the advent of the computer, it suddenly made that which was not seeable, seeable.
In the Torah Codes, we are dealing with some reality inside the book of Torah. We cannot pretend that we have a real full grasp of it. But using the means at our disposal, we see that it is real. It manifests time and again in various ways.
Certainly there are numbers of people who dismiss the Torah Codes by saying that you can find, you know, a code in any large body of letters. Take War and Peace and run some tables and you'll get some codes revealed. And that may be true. What I've never heard happening in War and Peace is a physical manifestation that then reinforces the code. And you have, in the case of the Mumbai massacres, the Torah code which appears in a specific verse saying Mumbai, terrorists, massacre, the key words. That verse is exactly where the bullets of the terrorists went through the Torah in Chabad house in Mumbai. I don't think they found a copy of War and Peace with a bullet hole there that had the same code revealed in that chapter. And I've had the same experience of a Torah code that had my name, my rank in the Israeli army, my date of birth, my father's name, and it appeared in a verse in the Torah that was exactly the verse that a group of rabbis chose to be inscribed in a brass plaque under a picture of me.
There is something very unusual in the Torah text, something that's unexpected to have happened by chance, and it's there by design.
Rabbi Matityahu Glazerson lives in Jerusalem and is an expert in the Torah codes. Lately, all of his efforts have been focused on finding codes about the Messiah.
And all the time I prove clearly that the codes are part of the process of Messiah. It's written that before Messiah will come, lots of secrets will be revealed through numerology, gematria, through codes, and this is exactly what is happening.
He's always excited to share new codes, and recently showed some amazing discoveries to Richard Shaw.
Rabbi Glazerson, you worked with me on Torah Codes Into Darkness, and the last time we met on that film was actually in Jerusalem. But then today you came to Los Angeles and you're showing me something which is so phenomenal, we just have to show it to people. And this is from a book from a rabbi that passed away. A Kabbalist that works with gematria, or the science of numbers, and finding things in the scriptures. It's beyond coincidence, in my opinion, that all this is happening. Can you please show us the 776 number that he found?
Yeah. What you see is the following. It's in Hebrew, but you have Biat HaMashiach, the coming of Messiah, Betav Shin Ayin Vav, in 776.
In the past 6 months, all of you that are working on Torah Codes have sent me some incredible tables, all pointing towards Messiah, and all of you seem to be working on that topic more than anything else right now. And can you please read these individual lines to us and explain what that means?
Now, the most important point is that next year is after sabbatical.
Yes.
And according to our tradition, the time of Messiah coming is after sabbatical. Interesting to point out that 776 comes before 777.
What was the ephod? What was the ephod that was used thousands of years ago? Tell us about that.
Yeah, the ephod was really, it looked like an apron for the high priest.
An apron?
Right? Yeah, it was like an apron, right? And this was connected to a breastplate. Now this breastplate was folded, and inside this, like a pocket inside, was a parchment with God's name. Because on this breastplate, which was joined to the ephod, there were 12 stones, and the names of the 12 tribes were engraved on it, And then, when a question was asked by the high priest, then the letters of the tribes, I mean those letters which have the answer, came out. So the high priest could find out through the letters which were shining, lightening, the answer to the question.
We know that the ephod was lost to us thousands of years ago. Is it possible that maybe someday we'll find the ephod?
Maybe, like other parts of the temples, we don't know something in the Vatican, we don't know, but we have to get them back. They are hidden somewhere, no doubt.
Do you think at the Torah Codes it may be a type of a modern day ephod? What can you tell us?
Now this was amazing really thing that we found when we put the Hebrew word code Torah, which is Israeli Torah code. Then we put the word ephod, it came there 3 times. It came exactly on the same line with the word code Torah, clearly showing connection between the Torah code and the ephod. And then what we have also there, dates, interesting. When it started coming to the world, I mean the idea of the codes, they knew about it. It was really 1976. Then, interestingly, it came also this year, and pinlight came there, unbelievable. Pinlight came there, minimal in the old Torah, unbelievable. Clearly showing
that's amazing.
That Finland is supposed to be very much involved in it and bring to the world also, because amazingly it came every very small amount of letter in between pinlight. So, and it was a minimal. So it means altogether, this table shows that Torah codes are connected to the ephod, as it appears so many times with the same story, and also it appeared with the word Urim v'Tumim, with the lights and completeness. I mean, Urim v'Tumim, we said this was the parchment with the names of God, which was called Urim Tumim. So this also came in the table there, which is exactly the idea of the Torah code, of the ephod and the Torah code.
There is a mystery in Peru of mammoth proportions, and no one knows the answer to it. In Cusco, in Sacsayhuaman, in Ollantaytambo in Peru are stones that weigh over 100 tons, yet put together so perfectly that you can't slide a human hair between them. How were these monuments built? Who conceived them? What people existed then? And is there evidence of a remnant of these beings that might have lived in the past 1,000 years? What's amazing here is we're at a skull that came from the royal graveyard in what is called the Paracas Royal Graveyard. And this is called the Chongo skull because that area is known as Chongos. And we will look at this, and in my opinion, this is definitely not cranial boarding or cranial deformation. There's only one parietal, and this skull is just absolutely enormous. Brian, why are there bones all scattered everywhere, almost as far as the eye can see? I've never been, I'm having trouble getting my head around it, literally. I've never seen anything like this.
Well, it's literally beyond as far as you can see. This graveyard, according to Senior Juan, goes 7 miles in that direction.
Wow.
And starts with the Paracas, which is the oldest culture, all the way up until the Inca.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that because it's a graveyard, people have been plundering for 500 years the tombs. Some of them are buried very deep.
Senior Juan said, or you said that, 24 feet? Or deeper than that?
The royal Paracas were buried that deep, but where we're going to go as we walk is we'll go to what's left of a Paracas village. And there I have found remains of elongated skulls.
Wow.
So hopefully today we'll see some evidence of that as well.
Essentially, this has been untouched. Well, it's been looted, but we're looking at a 3,000-year-old burial tomb here, burial grounds.
At least 2,000.
At least 2,000. Possibly 3.
Possibly. The deeper you go, the more you can find. As far as I know, there have been no scientific excavations here. This huge cemetery is private property, including the pyramid in the back. Most other countries you don't find that, but because Peru has such a rich history and basically the entire country is an archaeological site, that some people can't have things like pyramids, tombs, etc. on their private property.
Unbelievable.
Well, you saw in the museum in Paracas the little baby and the elongated skull, mother and supposedly the uncle as well that had red hair.
Okay.
Their bodies are actually under this mound.
Wow.
So this may be the tibia, I believe it is, of the mother. But we aren't allowed to dig up remains. So I honestly tripped over that. So the bodies are here. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to get an archaeologist to come and do a proper excavation of this, and from that, we'll be able to reassemble an elongated skull's body, or maybe even 2 of them. The patterns and designs on this 2,000-year-old fabric are so fine that only the best craftsmen of the fabric arts would be doing this. The only reason they would be doing that would be for a royal personage. The finer the fabric, the higher the rank. Just like the finer the pottery, the finer the design work on a pot represents rank. So this clearly was a person of royal heritage.
Okay, I got it.
From underneath, bro.
Just hold it. I think just hold it. I got it. Okay, I don't rip it. Oh my gosh. There it is. Whoa. That's it. It's coming off. There it is, up there. Okay.
Oh, it's amazing.
Look at that.
Can you hold it up, Joe?
It's okay.
So you still have that to come off.
Well, there he is right there.
And that's, oh my gosh.
Wow, look at that.
Look at how big that is.
Wow.
Lower jaw is trying to Tell us why a bronze chisel would not be able to duplicate this.
Well, bronze is a lot softer than this stone. This stone is 6.5 to 7 out of 10 in hardness, with 10 being diamond. Bronze is 3.5 to 4 in hardness. So it would be the equivalent of trying to cut down a tree with a plastic knife. If the tool is softer than the material, it simply can't do anything. And that's what the great mystery is of this wall, as well as Sacsayhuaman, which we will see. It almost looks like the stone was molded into shape, as if the ancient builders were able to soften the stone almost to the consistency of marshmallows, and then push them into place and turn off whatever machine it was they were using, and then just continually move down and up in order to construct it. Because in a lot of cases,
that's unbelievable. The
joinery is so tight that you can't fit a human hair in between. And this wall is 6 feet thick.
And to complicate this, the wall is not vertical, straight up and down, 90 degrees from, let's say, a flat base. The wall is leaning at a slight angle as it goes up for stability.
Right.
So now you've got even more complex angles. And if we, look at this. I mean, there's nothing square or level about any of this. Every stone is polygonal. Every stone has its own peculiar shape.
Yeah, every single stone is a different shape and size. And what we'll see when we go around the corner is that the builders went one step above that, and they created pictograms of animals in the walls as well, like a jigsaw puzzle.
Amazing.
So that requires planning.
There is indigenous rock, which is found here at Sacsayhuaman. And then there is other stone, which is andesite. And the question is, where did this andesite, these huge megalithic boulders, originate from? Where were they quarried? Senor Jesus, where did these stones come from? How far away?
Las leyendas incas dicen
According to the Inca legends, they were brought from Yucay and Muina. Yucay is 72 kilometers away, and Muina 45 kilometers away.
This is the indigenous rock of the area, and this is limestone. The stones that build these walls are andesite. So we have a real problem because this andesite stone comes from 40 miles away in one direction, which begs the question, how does an ancient culture, maybe without the wheel, move cyclopean blocks, some of them weighing as much as 125 tons? So not only were these stones hauled 40 miles plus, but they also came from an elevation about 2,000 feet lower than what you see here. It truly is enigmatic.
Well, the thing is, I've read, as far as I know, every Spanish chronicle and the only Inca chronicle that exists. And no one can say, even archaeologists can't say who made these. The stone is far too big for human, just physical labor to move them, especially from 40 miles away. And so some of the accounts state that when the Spanish first arrived up here at Sacsayhuaman, they were stupefied. And they asked the Inca, they said, "Did you build this?" And the Inca said, "No. These were made by the giants long before us." And I think we're definitely looking at a mysterious culture of incredible sophistication existing long before history into what is called prehistory. It may have been the Nephilim.
Sure.
That theory is as strong as any other.
This stone is granite, and it's not local. It comes from across the valley and up the side of a mountain, which we'll see. That's the quarry site. The little flecks of white that you see in the stone is quartz. So it's highly piezoelectric. And so this stone was selected specifically to construct the Great Sun Temple, which we'll see up there. Some of the blocks are 40 tons plus. But we'll see very obviously that Inca construction is very different, and I have to say inferior to the work of the megalithic builders, which is what that whole area is up there.
This is a resonator. Unbelievable. Go. How did they move a 40-ton block of stone to this position? Not only that, look at how this has been precisely carved out. And the joint down here is seamless, literally seamless. And because this is sloughed off from thousands of years of weathering, you can feel the polished surface of the granite. Brian, tell us about this, please.
Well, this is probably the finest example of joinery in Peru, because this block, which is at least 12 to 14 feet long, fits perfectly, and I mean perfectly, on top of the blocks below and straight through 3 feet to the other side.
Amazing.
You can't fit a human hair in that joint. Today we could possibly create a joint like that, but you would need a massive saw that had zero vibration to it. The saw blade couldn't move back and forth at all.
Sure.
Because this is a seamless
fit.
We're here at the Temple of the Sun. The vantage point is incredible here. And behind me are granite blocks, which are about 40 tons each. And the workmanship here is just spectacular. In my opinion, what we are looking at is Nephilim architecture. In other words, I believe that this is the handiwork of the giants, of the Nephilim. And then a great cataclysm, something happened which toppled the temple, just like we see in the ancient world, all of the ancient sites and different continents. Something happened and destroyed what was here.
The reason why this wall is still somewhat intact is that there is earth behind it. And in the front too, it's the same thing. The wall has been packed into the earth, so a major earthquake or other catastrophe, which I'm sure happened here many thousands of years ago, caused the sides to explode. And that's why all the way down the hill, that way and that way, we find massive megalithic shape blocks that belonged here.
Senor Renato, where did this skeleton come from? Where did you find it?
¿Dónde encontró a Waiki, señor Renato?
Él fue encontrado en una montaña que está al frente de este pueblo.
It was found in Huiracochán, which is a mountain across from Andahuaylillas. It's also a place where a lot of meteorites have been fall down in that area.
Is this cranial deformation, head cradle boarding?
¿Hay una deformación craneana en Waiki?
No es deformación craneana porque
For the characteristics of Waiki, it's not a cranial deformation, it's natural.
It's natural. And you are an anthropologist.
¿Es usted un antropólogo?
Sí, antropólogo.
And you're not, is this human in your opinion?
¿Es humano en su opinión?
No, no es humano. No es humano porque tiene la fontanela abierta.
For all the characteristics, Waiki is not a human being. He has 11 ribs. Her bones are big, and also the sockets of the eyes are more bigger than the human beings, and the nose is very different. So it's different in every possible way, including from the chin.
This is not a hoax. It's not. You didn't make this. It's not a hoax. No one found. It's not a prop. This came out of the graveyard.
Eso usted no lo ha recreado, o sea, no lo ha formado. Es algo que usted encontró en una de las tumbas en Huiracochán.
Sí, sí, sí. Se encontró en una tumba y así la hemos traído y está tal como se le encontró a él.
It was found in a graveyard and he just brought it here. He didn't touch. He didn't do anything.
How many fingers? How many fingers on the hand? Any way of knowing that?
¿Cuántos dedos de la mano tienen?
Eso es lo que no sabemos porque no tenía manos y tampoco los pies.
Oh, that's unknown because we didn't have hands. She didn't have hands nor.
Are there any more of these up at the mountain?
¿Hay más Waikis en la montaña, in the mountain?
No sabemos si hay más. Se supone que debe haber posiblemente, de acuerdo a los datos que hemos conseguido, pero es muy grande la montaña para buscar, ¿no?
We don't know for sure. It's a very big mountain. More likely there are more.
There was a military contract operative that was brought in to find out what happened to some troops that went missing in Afghanistan. In the search for the missing soldiers, the unimaginable occurred. This man tells watchers what really transpired.
Several years ago, well-known Nephilim expert Steve Quayle broke a story about a giant that was killed in Afghanistan. And he had an interview with the pilot that flew the giant's body out on a C-130 aircraft. The story was covered on the net and on Coast to Coast AM with popular radio host George Norrie.
Back in December of 2008, LA, Steve Quayle was on the program, as he's been so often, and he brought us that pilot anonymously. Pilot did not want his name disclosed, and he talked about this very bizarre story of how he flew this dead giant out to some base in Ohio.
Describe exactly what you saw.
Well, when we came up, basically came outside, we had a normal 463L pilot loaded down with what they told us was a giant.
For LA, the Nephilim has been his life. He's done hundreds of radio and TV interviews over the years on the subject and received an honorary doctorate for his research. Researching and writing about it since 1988, Watchers 10 is the culmination of those years of research, exploration, interviews, and lab tests, proving these facts are real without the worldwide cover-up that has actively been concealing the truth. Watchers director Richard Shaw also has done a myriad of radio and TV interviews on topics ranging from the Torah Codes to UFOs. On one of those interviews, he spoke with a caller who was in Special Forces in Afghanistan back in 2002. After the show, they talked for a long time, and it became clear that this was one of the men that actually shot and killed the giant. Then later, LA happened to meet another Special Forces soldier who could confirm these stories. Neither of these men wished to reveal their identity. We filmed them in remote locations because of their military backgrounds and the sensitive nature of what they're revealing, but both felt it was imperative to finally tell the truth.
You were in Afghanistan in 2002, and you were called into a very remote section of Afghanistan because a patrol had basically gone missing.
Exactly.
Okay, and there's no villages around
nothing
for miles.
Right.
So it's very remote.
Yeah, very remote. So we flew in to about 4 kilometers. We're hiking through the same area where they were supposed to make one of their checkpoints, one of their rally points. And before we'd left, there was all kinds of what happened with the ambush, but that was even odd because at point of ambush, you would call for maybe close air support, something, okay? There was no calls made, just off the grid. So we're coming down a mountainside, and it was a nice path, a goat path. As we bent around this corner, you could see this opening of the cave. There's a cave as we're coming around. And then I see there's a lot of rocks, which is another oddity, and then bone matter. When I'm not close enough to identify what kind of bones, but I did see something I knew was a piece of our communications equipment. So instantly, we're thinking ambush, maybe animal, could be anything. And there was enough room in front of this cave, but it had a sheer drop-off. But there was enough room that we actually got into a decent dispersal in case of ambush.
You see something coming out of the cave, and it's moving with a speed and agility that catches you off guard.
Everybody. And he comes out. It was a man at least 12 to 15 feet in height. This is a monster. Red beard, then his hair was longish past the shoulder, a scarlet red, and Dan runs at him and starts shooting, which broke all of us into the reality. Because it was
so
surreal.
Now your training is kicking in.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Muscle memory, complete muscle memory. While Dan is moving at him, another bro of mine's laying down fire and I start firing. He skewers Dan. He's now got him on this pike. It went through him. And he's still got him, and he's coming after more. We all just clicked in. I don't know what it was, but I remember we're all like, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. And our weapons components were in force. We had 308s, and we had Barrett 50s. This is sounding longer than it took. We're talking 30 seconds. And he's taking multiple hits and is still moving.
He talked about this giant being 1,100 pounds, anywhere from 10 to 15 feet long, and it was killed. It was apparently shot somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, but before it was shot, it lunged at several of our troops, our soldiers. It may have even gorged somebody. It was just a bizarre story, and it just sounds like the Nephilim from the Bible, doesn't it?
That's why we're so fascinated by this. Why? If people have a right to know about this stuff. I mean, if there are 15-footers or 18-footers roaming the planet, and our military has brought them down, I mean, we have a right as American citizens. I mean, this isn't classified military stuff. This is something that we need to know, and it points back to the biblical prophetic narrative. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, here's my personal opinion. My personal opinion is if it points that the Bible's accurate, They don't want it. If it goes against Darwinian evolution, it's not to be spoken of.
So you're out in the boonies running around looking for high-value targets?
Correct. Okay. And we're doing those operations, and as we're getting into firefights, we're getting into different scrimmages, you want to put it that way, we would come back to the base and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that killed this, what they started calling this really tall person. At first I didn't think anything of it, and then come to find out that the person that they killed actually was 3 times the size of a man, had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet, and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we'd heard that they had killed this thing inside a cave, or the mouth of a cave, and it was common knowledge among the military to hear this.
And when you say common knowledge, what do you mean? I mean, how does that work?
Years later, to come to find out, when I had returned from Afghanistan and had met other military members that had not been there in the operations with me, if you would bring up the giant of Kandahar, they knew about it. When you first hear it, you're thinking like, this has got to be a joke, this has got to be a hoax. But then after things go down a certain way and you keep hearing it, you start to realize it's not a joke. They kept telling us to keep our weapons high, which means normally it's 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, but they kept telling us to put it towards a man's head and put it higher. So we would question, why do they want us to shoot higher than a man's head?
That's bizarre.
It is.
Our contact said 2002 is when they shot this 15-footer or taller, and you're now in this, you know, in the service around 2005. This word has gotten out, and what I find interesting here too is that if you're going to create a hoax, I get that, but you got details: 6 fingers, red hair, double rows of teeth, 6 digits on the toes, and of course that brings it right back into what we hear about in the biblical prophetic narrative, specifically the Nephilim. Your thoughts?
I agree. I will tell you that when I was doing my time in the service, and the stuff I saw, some of it I couldn't explain, like lights in the sky during firefights, like orbs, or lights that would be the size of a softball that looked that size looking up in the sky but making weird noises. And even going to Iraq myself and being near Haditha Dam and seeing the prisoners underneath the dam, and the prisoners would scream and there'd be this awful feeling underneath the dam, and then later finding out in the Bible that angels locked underneath there, where it talks about.
And this Haditha Dam is the Euphrates.
Is Euphrates,
and there's
correct.
an angel supposedly locked underneath the Euphrates,
correct,
which is released in the book of Revelation.
Correct.
That's bizarre. So you're actually at this site, and soldiers are being locked, imprisoned underneath the Haditha Dam,
correct,
and they're freaking out.
They're freaking out. They said they could feel it. In fact, the people who would guard them they would draw straws to see who would actually take them.
No one wanted to go down.
Nobody wants to go down. Going back to Afghanistan, we would hear these things. We would hear the locals talk about rumors of these giants.
What would the locals say? How would they talk about it?
They say that they lived in the caves and they would eat people, and
they were cannibals.
They were cannibals, and we, at the time, chalked it up to our United States as Bigfoot. We realized that every culture had some kind of folklore, but to actually all of a sudden hear that a military unit had killed something.
And you have to assume that the giant is not alone, that the giant is not the only being living on this planet. There's got to be a whole school of them somewhere. You know, maybe he's got a female mate, maybe he's got children, who knows. Unfortunate that he had to attack our soldiers rather than be somewhat peaceful, but I guess that comes with the territory.
Dan was dead. Okay, and Wyatt is a good man, probably one of the best men I know, now dead. Before I'd left, they were already starting what they call a 9-line, which is a medevac request. They're sending out a medevac request, then all of a sudden it's not a medevac request. All of a sudden we had a helicopter show up because, like I told you, it was a large precipice and a sheer drop. So the helicopter just came up from the drop. They had dropped netting, which is like cargo netting. It's like squares. We were told we had to bundle him up. And we get another bigger helicopter, but it's almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day that could get, you know, through this area. because the mountains, you got to remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift. And so we got him on there. The thing was too big. We couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while.
Really foul.
Oh, it was like a combination because of the, how do you put that, the persistence of a skunk smell. But once the helicopter came in, dropped its little hook, and off he goes. The communication was sent out that we had a very large possible human creature.
There you are in the hills of Afghanistan. How many troop members are you with?
We had 6 on my crew, and when we say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base. I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. What I could see that it did have the 6 fingers. I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. We estimated at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing. Basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured it was around 1,100 pounds.
Of course we're upset. That's a given, okay? We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted it.
How many fingers?
6 toes.
6 toes.
And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has, I don't know what it's called, but it's
like a fungus on
the nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly. That's what they look like.
I'm going to show you the artifact. It's a bronze artifact. We had it tested. It's about almost 98% copper, pure copper, but it's bronze. Does this look familiar?
I can confirm it was probably about a 10-foot pole connecting it, lashed, split pole like I guess they would have done back in the old days.
Was it about this long?
Oh, easily.
This was found in the wilds of Michigan. We have come to call it the Nephilim lance. It is definitely not a sword. It's a pike, it's a lance. And what, you put a staff on this thing, good luck trying to wield it. And what's interesting is the weight of this lance ties into the biblical prophetic narrative. Talks about the weight of the spearhead was 300 shekels, talking about one of the giants. I think it was Ishbi-Benob. The giant spearhead was 300 shekels. When you convert that to pounds, that's 8.5 pounds. That's what this is. We believe the story of the giant to be true. But what if there's evidence of an ongoing cover-up by the elites that know that releasing the truth about the giants would change all the theories in intellectual circles?
We're at the port of Long Beach in California, where you can take a boat or a helicopter to the island of Catalina. Between 1919 and 1928, Ralph Glidden excavated hundreds of grave sites on the island while looking for Indian artifacts. He sold his collection in 1962 for a mere $5,000, which also included some amazing photos of skeletons. Hearing that the museum on Catalina had this collection, L.A. traveled to the island and asked to see the vault where the Ralph Glidden files had been kept for decades, away from public view. What he found there was both remarkable and disturbing.
In the fall of 2013, I was allowed access to the Ralph Glidden files. Some of these files are represented on the wall, but a vast majority of them are not. This is the room where the former curator John Borgina came out with all the boxes of film and pictures and journals, and I sat here with my camera and my tripod. The museum boxes were over there, and all this was covered in white paper, and I sat here basically for 10 hours and combed through everything. And of course, that made much of what we see in On the Trail of the Nephilim too. And one more thing, this is the safe where all the files came out of, which I was then able to look at. I'm rummaging through these photographs, looking at them very carefully. I've got my white gloves on, being very meticulously, putting them back into the correct folders and everything. What astounded me is I just went, oh my gosh! And I called John Borgino, the former curator of the museum, over, and I said, how many fingers do you see here? And he counted them, and he said, oh my gosh, there's 6 Native American cultures, from New Hampshire to the Chumash Indians out here in California. Talk about a race of cannibalistic giants, many of whom had red hair, which populated the area, and they also had 6 fingers. We hear this legend from tribe after tribe after tribe, all through the Americas.
Well, LA, my dad, I remember one time we were up on a mountain looking at the skies, looking specifically at the warrior constellation. And I'll never forget him pointing at the warrior's belt and saying that that's where the star people came from. And the star people came, they fell from the skies and they took our women. They weren't good. Many of them demanded tribute, they demanded sacrifice, they demanded worship as gods. And in the biblical narrative, we see the same thing with the fallen angels. And we also find this globally amongst tribes, where these star people or star beings, whatever you want to call them, would come and make themselves out to be gods to be worshipped. Now, we find these accounts throughout all the tribes. First Nations tribes is what I'm speaking of.
Okay.
Accounts of the star people coming. Kokopelli is one of them, a very famous flute player of the Southwest.
Sure.
Interestingly enough, you could find in the book of Enoch that one of the fallen angels is named Kokopel.
Which is very, very similar to Kokopelli, just one
letter of difference. So there is definitely a biblical foundation to what we find, but the paradigm being that these were pre-contact, European contact, pre-missionary stories that very much affected the lives of our people.
So is there something in it? And if there is, then we should find physical evidence of that.
But perhaps the most intriguing photo that LA found was Ralph Glidden standing over what appeared to be the complete skeleton of a giant. LA's discovery of this photo in the museum's vault had been ignored for decades.
And we've had that particular photograph analyzed by 3 different computer analysts who looked at the photograph, and through different means were able to ascertain that what this skeleton was in front of Mr. Glidden was approximately a 9-footer.
While all the effort that went into the analysis is true, what's very strange and yet typical of such discoveries is that the truth of the matter is often concealed when it comes to the general public learning of the actual details. From their own vaults, this amazing photo was added to the museum wall, but not without the giant being cut off from the bottom of the picture. It's a very curious development that dilutes the whole impact of the image, and we can only wonder why yet another morsel of truth has again been covered up.
Over the past 10 years, sightings of UFOs have skyrocketed in number, as is the quality of video due to everyone having a cell phone that can shoot high-def images. Yet enthusiasts around the world are constantly using higher-end video cameras to document UFOs. Starting in 2007 and appearing each year through 2009, a large spacecraft appeared over the Sea of Marmara in Turkey. It is still the most amazing video of an alien craft in existence. Dr. Roger Leir was there during the filming in 2009. Then Richard Shaw does an analysis of the alien beings that can be seen inside the craft as it hovered over the sea.
In Watcher 7, a digital master of what may be the best UFO video of all time was given to Richard Shaw by Dr. Roger Leir only a few months before he passed away. The video shows a spacecraft hovering over the Sea of Marmara in Kamburgaz, Turkey, and was shot by videographer Yalcin Yalman in 2009. The video showed a ship with a viewing portal in front with what looked like 2 alien beings. It was then analyzed by the University of Istanbul and documented as an actual sighting.
What we saw was absolutely mind-blowing because it was the front of what appeared to be a disc and 3 portals. In each portal, you could actually see beings, and some of them was the typical black-eyed the grays, but there were other beings that were there also.
The master mini-DV tape was sent to Chile for analysis by Mario Valdez Santiago. Mario did a frame-by-frame analysis and found what he believed to be a third alien being.
What he did was he took and he did an analysis on the occupants.
Since the images from the tape were fuzzy, he helped by sketching in the details in an overlay. The incredible detail evident in Mario's work was astonishing, but Richard wanted to see if he could find the third alien himself using professional compositing software. He decided to do a follow-up analysis based on the original digital copy that Roger had given him. Since there's so much fakery in the field of UFOs, on YouTube and everywhere else, Richard is now going to show us the steps he took using Adobe After Effects, a professional compositing program on Mac, to see what else might be hiding in the original video.
First thing I did was to scale up the video to HD size, and then I needed to work on the brightening it up a little bit here. So I'm using the curves effect, which is, you can also find it in Photoshop, but this is on moving images. I wasn't really happy with what the curves filter would do. I used something else later, but right now I'm just trying to bring up the luminance. What I've tried to do here is bring up the brightness of it so that the stabilizer has something to lock onto. This is After Effects stabilizer mode, and basically the little boxes around what looks like the left alien's head, which seemed to be an object that I was hoping the software could find and lock onto. So that's what I'm doing here. It only partially worked. You see how it jumped by? I didn't do that. The software couldn't, it lost lock. Well, there you can see the little alien's eyes there. It's kind of interesting. I ended up putting a grid up on the screen and manually, a frame at a time, stabilizing it myself. If you look up into the right corner there, you can see the keyframes that were drawn in as far as position. They're all popping in. And down in the timeline there, in the sequence window, you can see how all these are lining up. When I zoom into it here, you can see something in the dark space. That's what we're interested in, is looking into that dark space to the right of the two little alien gray heads that we've seen in other videos before of this same Cambergas footage. There's something there, and it's moving around really fast. It just almost looks like static when you look at it in real time. It was only until I decided I would slow the frame down that I really got the results I wanted. You have to look closely, but right there where I've got the cursor going around, there's something there. Moving what appears to be its head back and forth, rotating its head back and forth. And, you know, some people can see that and some people can't. I'm going to help by freezing it and blowing it up a little bigger and enhancing the brightness so you can see it. Now you can kind of see kind of a profile of the alien head. The reason that we have such a speed differential, in my opinion, is that we're actually seeing an actual example of time dilation. In other words, the difference in time domains from where Yeltsin, the cameraman, was recording with his camera on the beach to this craft hanging out over the sea, perhaps a mile away from him. And the craft was levitating for several hours over this one spot, and according to everything that we've learned, there's always missing time components when people are aboard a craft, and this may be the reason for it, that it is an illusion, but to us it looks like everything is moving 10 times the normal speed.
The time dilation problem no doubt contributed to the blurry images and frames that had intra-frame blurring. The camera was no match for what was going on inside the spaceship. To help you see the footage better, Richard time-stretched the video 600% in After Effects and then doubled it again in Final Cut Pro.
What I'm going to do now is loop some of these passages so that you can see them backwards and forwards, because seeing the motion will help you see the aliens. I put the arrows up there near the large eyes to help you kind of isolate them. There's also something else going on, but here's the third alien's eyes coming up here. Here's the best shot I have of the third alien. You can see it turning its head and looking off to the side. Perhaps it's something next to him. The more I looked at this footage and examined it, the more that I began to believe that there was something else going on to the right of the three aliens, and it looks almost like a humanoid being dangling its feet out the front of the spacecraft. I would hesitate to speculate on what it might be. It's incredible that we can see anything, but I'm still amazed every time I watch this video.
Captain Robert Salas once headed up a nuclear site in Montana when a UFO landed nearby and disabled all of the intercontinental ballistic missiles. A few years later, he was visited at his home in Manhattan Beach, California, by some small beings that took him, against his will, aboard a craft. This amazing revelation of abduction from such a credible military expert adds tremendous credence to the idea that there are entities performing bizarre and inhuman tests on the human population.
And I wake up to see a bluish light coming from what appeared to be the living room. And I woke up my wife. I said, you see that light? And she said, yes, I see the light. And I said, I got to get up and check it out. I was pretty frightened that somebody might be in the house, burglar.
Sure.
I had two small kids. So I start to get up, and all of a sudden I'm paralyzed. I cannot move my limbs. And I struggled. I really struggled and struggled because I was frightened because we had two small kids in the house, and my wife. I turned to her and asked for help, couldn't move, and I was surprised to see that she was unconscious.
Wow.
I recall next seeing a figure in the doorway. Appeared to be a hooded figure. I could not describe the face at this point. I mean, I don't recall seeing specific features of the face. But then I'm aware that there's others in the room now. Next thing I remember is kind of floating off the bed and moving towards one of the windows we have in the bedroom. And seeing my wife lying there. I can actually see her lying in bed, unconscious. I approached the window thinking they, and I remember having this thought, they don't know how to open the window. The window's locked. I remember locking it the night before with a latch and thinking they don't know how to open the window. All of a sudden, I'm upright, going right through the window. I know this sounds very strange. It is very strange, but that's how I recall.
As Dr. Jacob says, everyone goes through the window.
I say, well, does the window in some way open by itself? And I say, no, it doesn't open by itself. And she says, I think I'm going right through the closed window. Wow. And she says to me, does anybody else ever report that? Not knowing that everybody reports that. What you're looking at when people fly through windows and walls and ceilings and this and that is future physics. Mm-hmm. Mathematically, it can be done if you do it mathematically, because if the Earth can be squashed into the size of a grape or a softball or whatever it is, everything is made up of molecules and there's space and right. So mathematically it's possible, but in our universe and in our level of technology, which is brand new, it can't be done.
Well, that's what I recall, going through the window. The next thing I remember, I don't remember being outside or seeing a craft of any sort at that point. The next thing I remember was being on a table and being shown, and they made a point of showing me this, a large, what looked like a needle. And by large, I mean large.
Thank you.
Almost a foot long. So they were going to insert it in my private area. Let's put it that way. And they did. And they told me it was not going to be painful. But as they started to insert this needle or whatever it was excruciating pain. And that's point number 2 as far as why this was a real incident, because I recall the pain. I recall how bad the pain was.
Did you attempt to fight them at this point at all?
I think I was struggling because I yelled out that this is very painful. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I expressed that, the pain went away. It was just like magic. As soon as I expressed the idea that this was very painful, the pain went away. It was gone. And they continued with the procedure, whatever they were doing. So that's what I just told you is what I've derived from my own memories and also from hypnotherapy sessions I've had. Now, aside from that, I've had dreams, which I think are related to this. So this is in the box that I call may have happened. May have happened. You know, one of these dreams I see this large black oval-shaped eye right next to me, and I can see the glassy appearance of the eyeball. I can see actually some of this skin, I guess, around the eye, and it's right here.
Dr. Jacobs believes, and I know you know who he is.
Yes, David Jacobs.
Yeah,
sure.
Dr. David Jacobs believes that there's a breeding program going on, a very vigorous breeding program. There's an agenda that hybrid beings are being created. Now, when you were on board that ship, did you see any evidence of a hybrid being?
I don't recall seeing any evidence of a hybrid being. However, I think they did take a sample of my semen, and so we can derive from that why they did that.
Sure.
But no, I didn't see evidence of a hybrid program myself.
With everything that you've seen, and I realize that it's a very complex issue. On one hand, it seems like, gee, they're shutting down the silos. They don't want nuclear war on the planet. On the other hand, they're taking you against your will, shutting your wife down against her will, kidnapping you, because that's what it is,
right,
and doing things which you don't really want to have done to you. So with that in mind, do you think the phenomena, do you think their intentions are good or something more sinister? Or don't you know yet?
Well, I would not even want to speculate on that. I can rationalize the idea that if they want us to get rid of our nuclear weapons, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing,
for
sure.
civilization,
yeah, it makes
for
sense.
humanity.
Fukushima, right.
Exactly.
In the old days, we used to say, and with their occupants, because if you said aliens, that was a line over which you did not cross. Aliens meant that you're going too far. Occupants, maybe there's occupants on board, maybe not. Then eventually the word became entities, and then the word became humanoids, or maybe there's crossing of that. They just couldn't say the word alien. They just could. Even now, people have trouble saying the word aliens. I have trouble saying the word aliens, but the fact is, they are aliens.
In 2012, stories began circulating about small children with completely black eyes, visiting people and terrifying them randomly. The kids came to be known as black-eyed children. Many people had these highly disturbing experiences, and the following stories are some of the most chilling ever presented by watchers. David, what initially got you interested in the black-eyed kids or black-eyed children?
Well, I had researched the paranormal for a lot of years, and in the late 90s I heard a few of these stories. Early days of the internet, they showed up. Very interesting, having an interest in all areas of the paranormal. I read them and kind of cataloged the information away for future use. But at the time, it seemed like this could be urban legend, it could just be, you know, hoaxes. That all changed when I met a gentleman named Paul. Paul is a former prison guard, martial artist, bodybuilder. I call him a John Wayne character. He's just a no-nonsense, no BS guy. One day having lunch, asked if he could join me, completely opened up and told me his story. And I was pretty stunned. You know, when I got involved in this field in the 70s, you said paranormal and people knew, okay, that kind of includes hauntings, cryptozoology, UFOs, the whole spectrum.
Okay.
And that's how I've always approached it, as in a holistic manner.
I was about 2 blocks away from my house, you know, on my jog with my iPod.
And this is like morning or afternoon?
It was afternoon. It was actually, I can tell you exactly what time it was. It was exactly 5:17. And that is important because I had been having a reoccurring experience with that number.
My personal opinion, after researching it for so long, is that these children are some kind of interdimensional being, for lack of a better word.
But I had never seen any children ever on that corner, and I was 2 blocks away and I was approaching the corner of Hartford and Shepherd, and there was a boy, he was about 10 years old, kind of striped shirt and baggy black pants. And it kind of looked a little strange. And the other thing that I noted was that he was wearing a yarmulke, which was very typical for that neighborhood.
What was
he
his
was to the
position,
side, and his head was down.
His head was down. Was he wearing
Yeah.
and a yarmulke on? Right,
And he was wearing a yarmulke,
Right.
yes. So I didn't think anything of it. You know, I'm running, I'm in my zone, I'm going east. And at the last minute as I approached him, I was just a few feet away. You know, I glanced up, and I usually smile hello at people. And that's what I did. I glanced up, and he caught me with this very intense look, and it was just frightening.
Whether they're there all the time and we're just not aware, or whether they're able to sort of shift into our reality, maybe that's the case. But the accounts are becoming more widespread. There are more and more of these stories showing up, and there's some kind of an agenda going on.
And this was like just the blackest depths that...
Without putting words in your mouth,
I mean,
give me a word for what you saw.
It was just like a cavern of, like looking down into a vacant cavern with just like evil at the bottom.
Okay, so it's the operative word here would be evil?
Yes, for sure, definitely.
So I believe that these beings, I don't think they have any good purpose at all. It's something very sinister. And I believe that they are actually somehow feeding off of that fear.
You're not sure, you know, you bolted the scene, and you're not sure how he left the scene, because obviously, I mean, did you do this at least once?
No,
Look behind you? You just
I was so scared, honestly, because he was so evil, and I could
Have you
feel
ever
it.
felt
I could
fear?
feel it.
Have you ever felt fear like this before?
Well, not really to that extent.
Not to that
No, I mean, all my hairs were standing up. You know, that's typically what happens when I encounter negative energy. I do get the hair standing on end thing going on, but I really just was so frightened by the whole thing that my only reaction was to run fast in the other direction and not look back. And I didn't look back. Otherwise, I may have seen him vanishing or something. I don't know.
I want to show you something. This is from a book by a person we're about to interview named David Weverly. And I want you to look at this cover. Did it look something like this?
Yes.
When you look at all of these accounts, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them at this point, when you look at all these encounters, when this peak of fear is reached in the victim, the kids are done. They vanish.
One of the more disturbing elements of people who encounter these children, I use that in quotation marks because we both think that they're not children or kids, is that these children will say phrases which sound almost normal but aren't. Tell us about that.
Right. The use of language is a whole subject in itself with these manifestations. First of all, most people describe their speech as being very monotone. They say that these kids speak in a very cold manner.
Is there any way you can, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you imitate that from some of the witnesses that you've talked to?
You know, everyone tries to do it, and they say that it doesn't really convey.
Right.
That, you know, some people say it sounds almost robotic.
Okay.
There's almost an implication that they're programmed, or that they've memorized a certain set of phrases, and they will default back to those. You know, they won't answer direct questions very often. They'll simply redirect and repeat a statement. So just let us in.
So here's a knock on the door, right? And I go, "Hi, kids, can I help you?" What do they say?
Could be any number of bizarre phrases. Here's one that really kind of creeped me out. Is it food time? No one speaks like that. That's not, you know, it's English language, but it's not a normal phrase. So it just doesn't fit. Is it, I think you should let me in, I think it's food time.
Tell us about the story which is in your book, The Black-Eyed Children, about the man in a pickup truck driving across the state of Texas in the middle of the night.
Hands down for me, the creepiest story that I've come across, just because I could sort of identify with it personally. But what happened was this gentleman contacted me, military man. He has family all over Texas. He was visiting family in East Texas, decided he wanted to see some of his relatives in West Texas. And this young man, he likes to drive at night, watch the stars, and just kind of buzz across those lonely Texas roads. As he's done many times, he takes off, got his thermos full of coffee, and it's a black night, he's driving along. These back roads in Texas, a lot of times you can hit just long stretches, no houses, no nothing.
Jeez, you scared the hell out of me, kid.
I want to get in your truck.
Do you live around here, kid?
Just let me get in your truck. We can go for a ride.
Do you need to get home? Do you live around here?
Just open the door and tell me to get in. We'll have a short ride.
I don't think so, kid.
Gets down the road a little bit, his training starts to kick in. I'm trained military, why am I running from a kid? Then he starts thinking logically, maybe this is a kid that really needed help. Hits a U-turn, goes back to the spot, finds the exact spot. Searches with a flashlight, searches everywhere. No sign of this kid anywhere. He's looking all around in the distance for any kind of a light from a house, an outside light, something. There's nothing.
Howard Storm had what is called a near-death experience. His was so complete, so full of amazing details that we interviewed him to learn what exactly happened. The experience completely changed his life, and you'll never be the same once you've heard Howard describe it. What happens after you die? We traveled 50 miles outside of New Orleans to see Dr. Jeffrey Long to ask what his research has revealed. Dr. Long has cataloged over 3,000 near-death cases. His interest in this area is both scientific and supernatural. To Dr. Long, there is no doubt that the experience is real.
Pleasure to meet you.
Absolutely. Wonderful. What piqued your interest in near-death experiences?
You know, it was a long time ago when I was in my residency training in radiation oncology, which is the medical use of radiation to treat cancer. I was busily going through one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, the Journal of the American Medical Association, looking for a cancer-related article. And to my complete surprise, I found an article with the word near-death experience in it. And I stopped. I was shocked because I had never heard of that before. And I remember thinking, you're either dead or you're not dead. What's this all about? And so, intrigued, I stopped and read the article and was immediately fascinated. I remember thinking, how is it possible that people clinically dead all around the world are having this same lucid, highly organized experience? And I remember thinking prophetically, wow, why isn't there more research on this fascinating topic?
Can you briefly describe what an NDE, near-death experience, is?
Well, no two near-death experiences are the same, but if you look at many of them, and I have thousands, you see a very consistent pattern of elements. No doubt in America today, millions of people have had a near-death experience. Around the world, tens of millions of people have had near-death experiences. While you can't really generalize to a near-death experience, a typical detailed near-death experience would involve, of course, a life-threatening event. No matter where on earth you are or what your religious belief is, near-death experiences and its content are strikingly similar. They're unconscious and they may be clinically dead with no heartbeat, no spontaneous respiration. And yet at that time, when a lucid, conscious memory should be absolutely impossible, they do have that experience. And that's the experience part of a near-death experience. Very often their consciousness goes above their body and they see ongoing earthly events, often their own frantic resuscitation efforts. Following that, they may go through a tunnel, variably described. Often there's a beautiful, mystical light at the end of the tunnel. After they pass through the tunnel, they're often in an unearthly realm. It's been referred to as heavenly realms. That's probably not an overstatement. Beautiful colors beyond description on earth, landscapes, there may be other beings, other people there. While they're there, they may have a life review where they see a part or even all of their prior life. They may encounter people that they knew during their earthly life that died, typically relatives, but it can be friends and acquaintances. Very often in a near-death experience, they then reach what's called a boundary, and that's, if you will, a stopping point.
Fascinating.
It could be a creek or a fence or something along the path they're going on. But once they reach that point, and there's often other beings with them, they have to make a decision about whether they're going to return to their earthly body. Remarkably, the great majority of near-death experiencers at that time, even though they've lived their earthly life for decades, that's their friends, family, loved ones, everything they know, the experience is so beautiful, the emotions are so intensely positive, they so feel that they're home in this realm that they do not want to return to their earthly life.
That's just amazing. In your book, one of the most astounding testimonies was regarding a person born blind.
Right.
So they've never seen anything that we're seeing in this room. They've never seen what light is, color, what human beings even look like. They had an NDE. Can you tell us what happened?
I'm glad you brought that up. My interview with Vicky, who was born totally blind, is one of the most astounding near-death experiences ever recorded. To somebody born totally blind, vision is unknown and unknowable. You cannot explain vision to someone totally blind from birth in terms of the other four senses. I tried, it's impossible. And yet Vicky, when she was in her early 20s, had a severe auto accident. And for the first time that she had vision in her life was when she was in the emergency room looking down on what she recognized as a body below her. She didn't even know it was herself.
She looked like it. She'd never seen herself.
She'd never seen herself.
Howard Storm's near-death experience is one of the most remarkable we've ever heard. He came out to meet us in California, but first he asked to see the Pacific Ocean, which we were happy to do. The hills are fun to drive and the beaches in Malibu are known the world over for their incredible beauty.
One of the most remarkable examples of a frightening near-death experience is by Howard Storm. He truly has an excellent example of a frightening experience and how that experience can turn around a life and result in a much more positive, loving individual afterwards.
I grew up in the 50s and 60s, went to a very lukewarm Protestant church, dragged to church, dressed up with a little bow tie and a little hat and a little, little outfit, trying to be cute. My sisters had muffs and gloves and all that. And it was a parade. It meant absolutely nothing. And the slapping and the yelling and the hitting from my father began in the parking lot after church. By the time I was 15 years old, it's like this religion thing it's all baloney. It's all pure hypocrisy. It's just a show, and it means nothing. And there was no evidence of all of those pretty things that were said in church in our environment. So I started reading philosophy, and on my own. There was no philosophy class in my high school, so I went from Plato and Aristotle and eventually made my way up to like Immanuel Kant, and then discovered Camus and Nietzsche and Heidegger and Jean-Paul Sartre and stuff like that, and became a atheist materialist, and was convinced, along with everybody that I knew, that religion was Alice in Wonderland. It was pure fantasy. It was wishful thinking, and there was no such thing. So basically I was a hedonist, nihilist.
Tell us about what happened right before you were taken out of your body. In other words, give us an idea of the sickness, let's say, that triggered it.
I was 38 years old, college professor on an art tour. I was leading an art tour of students around Europe, and I had a perforation of the small stomach, taken to a hospital, but it was a Saturday. Socialized medicine in Paris. We were confident that I was going to get great medical care. Instead, after being taken to the emergency room and told that my situation was grave and that I had to have surgery immediately, I was taken to another hospital and parked there for 10 hours and never seen by a doctor, never given any medication, nothing whatsoever. Nobody took my blood pressure, temperature, anything, just nothing. Just parked in a room and left. The doctors in the United States told me my situation was like having a burst appendix. Not a appendicitis, it was like having a burst appendix, and that my life expectancy was about 5 hours. So in 10 hours, I was in very bad shape.
And this is because the acid in the stomach has leached into...
Yeah, and so, to put it crudely, I was not only infecting myself, I was dissolving myself.
Wow.
So the initial thing that happened at 11 in the morning was like a point of fire, like this intense fire, which I thought at the time I'd been shot by a bullet. And that little point of pain, of acute pain, became eventually, over time, over the hours, it became my abdominal cavity from my groin to my collarbone.
Ooh.
And the pain was just totally unacceptable. And one of the things that kept going through my mind is like, I kept thinking to myself, I thought that you went out when you had this much pain. Why am I conscious? Why, how can I possibly experience this much? Because
and they weren't giving anything to...
I got nothing.
Wow.
And so it's very annoying to me when people tell me I had drug hallucinations, because it's like, I had begged and begged and begged for drugs, and because there was no doctor, they couldn't medicate me. So at 8:30 that night, this started at 11 in the morning, 8:30 at night, nurse came in the room and said they were sorry they were unable to find a doctor, and they would try and get one the next day, which would be Sunday. And I had been hanging on to life because I didn't want to die, because I knew that when you die, like I thought every intelligent human being in the whole world knew that when you died, end of story, it's over. You know, when you look at roadkill, you don't see any little blue angel go floating off to heaven. I mean, it's like, we're a biological organism. Our brain is electrical, chemical activity, and when it ceases, it's it. Just like a movie, the end, end of story. And 38 years old, I just thought, life was just starting, I was just starting to, get some success and fame, in my own little world as an artist and stuff like that, power, and life had been good for me. And so when she said that, I knew it was time to check out. What I was doing basically was trying to breathe. As I agitated my diaphragm, trying to inhale, exhale, it intensified the pain. So breathing was very, very painful. And so I was trying to breathe with as little movement as possible. And so to me, letting go was to stop trying to do that and just not breathe anymore. And I knew that it was going to be very easy for me to die because I had been trying not to die for hours. And if anyone's ever been there, you know when you're dying. I mean, it's not like a mystery. It's not like, oh, what a surprise. This was been going on for a very long time. So I closed my eyes and went unconscious. And
what happened at the moment where you thought you were dead?
I just went out, just gone. And then I awoke from that, and I was completely, utterly surprised because I was sitting next to the bed, and not only was the pain gone, which had been my total reality, but I felt more alive than I've ever felt before. And what that means is my touch, my taste, my smell, most particularly in my instance, my sight. Instead of seeing a 160-degree field of vision, I was now seeing a 360-degree field of vision, which I thought was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Rather than having like a certain depth of field, I saw like total focused clarity, far and near simultaneously. Everything was crisp, but that was also like the bottom of my feet. I could feel the texture of the floor as if I was caressing it with my fingertips.
Huh.
All my senses. I could smell my roommate's body odor from 15 feet away, very strongly.
So all your senses are heightened.
Yeah, and I'm going like, whoa! I mean, what's happening? And then some bad things started to creep into my reality, and it's hard for people to understand, but relatively speaking, that was far more real than what I experienced as reality in this world. In the bed that I had been occupying, a figure that upon closer examination, I come to realize looks exactly like me. And it's very, very disturbing because I'm standing there looking at something inanimate that looks like me. So the only thing that I could conclude, and I knew this was too fantastic to be true, that they had made a mock-up of me, like a wax dummy. Right. But the problem is that how could they have done that in such a short amount of time?
Right.
Okay, this is all mad. So I'm starting to yell at my wife, who's on the other side of the bed, still crying. And she has no reaction to me yelling at her. And I'm saying very crude things to get her attention. And very angry. So I decide that she is messing with me, because it was very typical of her that when she wanted to reject me, to just ignore me. So I turned to my roommate, who was a very kind 68-year-old Frenchman, who had been very nice to us the whole day. And I'm yelling and screaming at him, the same non-reaction from him. I'm screaming in his face, and his eyes are open, staring right through me as if I don't exist, which of course to him I didn't exist. But so I'm getting very agitated, very upset. The room is bright and lit, and I hear people outside the room calling me by name, and they're saying in perfect English, this is a French hospital, and so I thought this was very weird. They're saying, Howard, come on, hurry, let's go. So I go over to the doorway of the room, and there's people outside the room, out in the shadowy, darkened hallway. And I said, I'm sick, I'm supposed to have surgery, we're waiting for a doctor. We all take our understanding of who and what we are beyond this world. And my consciousness was, I am this physical being, this is who I am, and I'm carrying my identity, my ego consciousness with that. and I am not going to leave the ground. I'm not going to float. I'm not going to become illumined. You know, I'm me. I'm flesh and blood. I'm a big, strong 38-year-old guy. You know. Wow. Very, very Nietzschean. You know, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. Blah blah blah. You know. Right. I was a shot putter. I mean, I could. You know, I was a good shot putter. I mean, I was like I was a bully. And I used that frequently, you know. So, the people shepherd me down the hallway, and we're going along, and I'm becoming aware that there's something really wrong with all this. Is just not right. Well, first of all, there's no more architectural features. Now, I'm aware that we're on the 4th floor of Cochin Hospital, but we never hit stairs. We never go up or down. We're just walking. No walls, no ceiling, just space and like.
What did it look like when you say space? Was it like light that slowly faded into darkness, or what did that look like? That transition, can you recall?
Shadowy, out of focus, very fuzzy, very indistinct, which was just the opposite of what I've been experiencing in the room, which was incredible detail and intensity of everything, and now everything is hazy and difficult to perceive. Very, very hard to even perceive the people who, as the atmosphere around us becomes darker and heavier, they become closer and closer and closer. So eventually we're bumping into each other, and they're moving me on, pushing me on. Eventually it's so dark.
When you say they, how many were they, and what did they look like? How were they?
Originally maybe 8 or 10, but in a while I'm aware that there's many, maybe dozens or hundreds. I mean, of course there's no way for me to count, just a lot now. And I'm terrified because I don't know where we're going. This has gone on for a long time, and they're starting to say ugly things. And I'm getting pretty sure that this is no longer the hospital. I mean, we've gone way too far to be. We've walked out of Paris by now. We're gone. I mean, we're far away. I'm sure that they don't mean me well, and I know that there's no doctor or operation in my future, you know. And I said, I'm not going any further. I'm done. I'm going back, which was a bluff because I had no idea which way, back would be, and I didn't know where I was.
Couldn't find
darkness.
It. Right. Wow.
And they said, you're almost there, and they started to push and pull at me. Well, I had played some football in high school, and I'd been a tough guy, and I'd been in some fights and stuff, and so I started to defend myself. They're pushing, and so I'm like punching and, you know, and trying to fend for myself, but there's a lot of them. There could have possibly been hundreds and hundreds by now, because there's a lot of noise, and one of the results of that is I can't be in a lot of noise, like at a football game and stuff. I have to keep reminding myself it's okay. You know, it's like because I start freaking out. And
so in other words, let me understand something. If you're at a football game now and you hear that noise of a crowd, that sort of triggers the memory of being there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm fighting and they're winning, and it's, in retrospect, it's very clear that their intention was not to defeat me, because with all of them and one of me, if they wanted to defeat me, they could have just torn me apart, end of story. But that's not what they wanted to do. They were playing with me because they realized that they somehow were devoid of things that we would think of as human. They are human, but they were devoid of the things that we think of normally as human. They're devoid of compassion, devoid of love, devoid of feeling any kind of sympathy or interest in another person. And because of their own emptiness and their own torment, the only way that they could relate would be to want to bring someone else to their same place. Like if you're with a group of alcoholics or drug users, they want you to be high. I mean, nobody wants a sober person around, you know, when everybody's getting drunk. You know, I mean,
Sure.
you know, if you're in a football crowd, you can't just sit there and not cheer. I mean, he's looking at it like, what's the matter with you? Aren't you enjoying the game? You know, like, you know, I mean, and they wanted me to be one of them. And the horrible part of this is that I was one of them. I know that in many respects, they were my kindred brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And I was not a stranger to them or they to me. And all they were doing was initiating me into their world of loneliness, hopelessness, and despair, ultimately meaning their lack of God, their lack of love. You know, the Bible says love is God, God is love, and these are people who had rejected all of that, and when they left this world, they were living what they had basically sought all of their lives, except that in this world there weren't the pleasures of this world, like skies and trees and birds and joy and fun and stuff like that. So anyways, eventually they had enough of me that I was not able to respond anymore, which meant that I was laying on the ground in a fetal position. I had been scratched, bitten, torn, and the part that I don't talk about was they had done things to me that are too unpleasant for me to speak about and too obscene for me to want to relate. But I would suggest that there's no horror movie, no S&M movie or book or imagination that can begin to conceive of the things that they do without any hesitation.
How long did this particular part of the experience go on for?
Forever and ever and ever. I mean, and what I mean by that is time without any way of measuring it. So they had me and they did what they wanted to do. And I'm lying there completely spent. I mean, I had nothing left to resist or give.
Exhausted.
I was just a piece of meat lying there. And the only thing that was going on was people were kicking me, trying to get me to react, and I wasn't reacting anymore. I mean, people were kicking me in the face and just, I mean, I couldn't even wince anymore. There's just nothing. And I heard my voice, and I can never explain any of this stuff. I heard my voice say, "Pray to God." Pray to God. And I thought, I don't believe in God, and I'm not praying to God. And the voice said, "Pray to God." And I thought, I don't pray. I don't know how to pray. I can't pray.
Wow.
Forget it. And the voice said, "Pray to God." And I thought,
so 3 times.
Yeah. And I thought, well, when I was a kid, we prayed. I knew how to pray. So I'm trying to remember what it is to pray. And all I could remember was snatches of things that I had memorized when I was in school. So I've got, 70 years ago, our forefathers brought forth in this continent a new nation, casino, no, not prayer. The quality of mercy is not strained at drop, but that's the gentle rain upon the place beneath his tread. No, it's not a prayer. Glory, glory, hallelujah, his truth goes marching on. No, that's a song. But anytime I remembered something that had any reference to God in it, the people around me, in very, very powerful, obscene language, which I won't try to replicate, said, "There is no God, nobody can hear you, and if you don't stop it, we're going to make it much worse for you." This was how I understood God. This is how I was taught God was this really, really nice guy, Jesus, loved me and cared about me, and when I was a little boy, I prayed to him, and, help me, I'm scared, stuff like that. That came to me. And I really felt like it was my only shot. I mean, this is either going to work or it's going to be what I think it's going to be, which is this darkness and torment forever. So I called out, "Jesus, please help me." And with that, light came into the darkness, came upon me. Hands and arms came from this being of light, reached down and touched me. And when he touched me, all of my gore, which was much more profound than I had known, it was very gross, kind of just slowly dissolved away, and I became whole and intact. That was very secondary to what his touch did, which was internally it filled me with his love, which is no possible way to describe that, because it's far more intense than any human experience of love. I mean, if I took my mother's love and multiplied it by 100 or 1,000 times, that might be somewhat like what his love was. And his hands went under me while I'm feeling this healing and love, and he lifted me up without any effort and embraced me, and he held me, and I just wanted to be held by him, because this may sound strange, but I also knew that he liked me very much. He didn't just, this love wasn't like this abstract, sentimental thing. It was like, he knew me, and he liked me, and he cared about me, even though I had been very, very mean to him for my entire adult life. And I was aware that I had utterly and completely rejected him. And that he was going, that's okay, it's okay. Don't worry about it. You know, it's like, you're all right. I'm here now.
Have there been any negative experiences? People going through NDEs, not having a very positive experience, something traumatic happening in a very negative sense?
About 5% of near-death experiences are truly frightening and can involve some very frightening, even hellish graphic imagery. And yet, if you follow those people for years after the experience, they may say it was the most valuable experience they ever had to learn about themselves, to grow and change and be better people.
There was a moment in time when you had to go back. How was that presented to you, and how did you find yourself coming back? How did that all take place?
When I asked all the questions that I could think of to ask, even making up questions just to perpetuate the fun of being with Jesus and these people, because it was like wonderful. I mean, getting all this attention, I'm getting all this information, and I've retained all that whole thing, and I just wanted that to go on forever. But when I just couldn't think of anything more to ask, I asked the one question that had been troubling me for a long time, which was, I said, as a statement, I'm ready to go to heaven. Jesus said, no, you've got to go back to the world and try to do what you were created to do in the first place. So we had a huge argument, and I'm here to tell you that I argued as strongly with Jesus as I possibly could for me to go to heaven, and he persuaded patiently and kindly and with good reasons why that wasn't going to happen, and I was going to come back here. It was a really interesting conversation, because I have to fall back on this stuff all the time in my life. When I get discouraged, depressed, lose my way, I go back to the things that he said and try and restore myself, to explain to myself and re-energize myself of why I'm here. And ultimately he persuaded me that I was going to go back, and that's all there was to it. And so I agreed to that. And when I agreed to that, there was no transition. I was just very rudely back in the bed, in the pain, and immediately the nurse who had been in the room a little earlier saying there was no doctor came and said, a doctor has arrived. This is at 9 o'clock at night in Paris. A doctor has arrived and we're going to have a surgery. And they threw my wife out of the room, prepped me, and took me to surgery, and I had the surgery on 10 o'clock that night.
Some people that when they come back, it seems like knowledge has been just downloaded into them. How can that be?
Great question. You know, we have many near-death experiences that describe what's called universal knowledge. When they're in these unearthly realms, they may become aware of knowledge far beyond what we have on Earth. They may be aware of, if we call truly universal knowledge, how everything fits together, details, things beyond our wildest scientific, mathematical awareness or understanding that we have here on Earth. Unfortunately, when they return to their earthly body, almost never do they retain any portion of that universal knowledge. And in fact, one near-death experiencer said, of course I can't remember that universal knowledge. It's like putting an entire ocean of knowledge into the thimble that's my brain.
Right.
My book came out over 2 years ago, and there's been a lot of time for the world, for skeptics, to come up with their best arguments as to why my conclusions, that being that there's an afterlife, a wonderful afterlife for all of us, isn't real. And that skeptic rebuttal has not come about. It isn't there. I mean, as best I can tell from having lived and breathed and shared that book now for over 2 years, the conclusions stand. We really do have an afterlife, all of us, a wonderful afterlife.